Hello there. So today I'm going to do another ranking. I'm going to rank all the Minecraft weapons. There might have been um, some that I potentially missed, but I'm just going to do all the ones I thought of and put on here. Um, so yeah, let's jump into it. So Minecraft has a lot of weapons. You can see based on all the little things I have here. Um, and they all have several different types. So we'll be ranking them in different categories. So the first one here, we're just ranking all of them together. Then we're going to rank the projectile slash ranged category. Then we're going to rank explosives. And then we're going to rank assistives. This is I don't think people actually call it this, but we can explain that in a little bit. And then the last category will be melee. This will probably be the most controversial. Although I don't know for certain, maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, this is probably the most controversial spot. This is the one that I'm really excited to do. So let's jump into it. So as you can see here, Minecraft has, again, like I said, a lot of weapons. They come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes and abilities and all that. So let's get into it. So first one, wind charges. Wind charges are a pretty cool item. I really like them. I was super happy when they got added to the game. However, I don't really use them so much as an actual weapon. Again, they don't really deal that much damage. They deal half a heart, and I mean, they're really only used more so just to push people away rather than to actually deal damage. Which doesn't make them absolutely bad, but it's not really particularly great. However, it's not extremely hard to get them, but at the same time, you only get them from one mob, the Breeze, in the Trial Chambers structure. So I don't know. I feel like it's not really that great. I'm just gonna put it in F tier. I know I'm gonna put it in C tier because it is a little bit useful. The next weapon we're gonna do here, the mace, arguably the most powerful weapon in the game, as it can deal theoretically infinite damage if you manage to hit your target. That is, it's a difficult weapon to use because you have to risk losing your life or taking a lot of fall damage in order to do it, as well as the fact that the weapon is really slow and it doesn't deal particularly much damage just from a regular hit. But what makes the mace amazing, I know, that bad, is the fact that it has this unique attack called a smash attack, which basically allows you to, when you're falling from, a really high place and you smash into your target, you won't take any fall damage, and you'll in fact deliver a massive amount of damage onto whoever's you're killing, as well as a decent amount of damage to anyone or anything that is right next to it, sending them back with a lot of force. So I think I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's very cool, but it's just not particularly easy to use. On top of that, it's kind of hard to get, especially getting the heavy core itself. And you can really only get this from one specific structure. And while it does help that you can craft it, again, it's not particularly the easiest weapon to get. And most of the time, you probably won't encounter a Trial Chambers in a world. The next weapon we have here is the bed. And now you're thinking, well, why is the bed a weapon? Well, let me tell you this. Well, in Minecraft, there's this there's this thing where, so like, normally you just try to sleep in a bed, right? I mean, that just makes sense. And we do that in real life, we do it in the game too. But if you go into the nether or the end dimension, and if you've ever placed down a bed, you know what happens. Well, you can use it as an explosive, and it does a massive amount of damage. It's also pretty cheap, only requiring 3 planks and 3 blocks of wool. Speedrunners use it all the time. I've even used it a good handful of times myself to defeat the Ender Dragon. It makes that process a lot easier. Just be kind of careful with how you place it out, but it's not a very difficult weapon to use. It's pretty straightforward. However, again, it's really only limited to the nether and the end as per being a weapon. But it's not a bad choice. I'm going to put it in A tier. Might be a little high for some people in their opinion, but because of it's being so useful in speedruns and manhunts when you're in the nether or the end, I think that's what makes it deserve higher spot. Then next we have the respawn anchor. This is a classic staple in crystal PvP. I don't really do very much crystal PvP, and I'm really not that good at it. And I tend to use it a lot more for just setting my spawn point in the nether than I do actually trying to kill people with it. However, it's not a bad weapon, but it's not the easiest one to use either, as you have to get 6 crying obsidian and 3 glowstone blocks on top of additional 4 glowstone blocks to fully fill it up. Although in crystal PvP situations, you technically only need 1, as you're not trying to actually set your spawn, you're trying to kill people, and the explosion effect will remain the same if you are trying to use it in the overworld or the end. However, in my general playthrough, my experience, I don't really use it that much. But it's not bad at all, but I just don't tend to use it very much, so I'm going to put it in B tier. Next, we have the lava bucket. Now, the lava bucket is a pretty easy weapon to use. It doesn't deal much damage when you're just trying to, punch something with it. It only does half a heart, or really just the same damage as your fist. Right, but it's very easy to place out. You can use it for lots of traps. On top of that, it's a very practical weapon. Only costing 3 iron to make the bucket itself, and then you have to do is just find one singular lava source, and it does a pretty good amount of damage. And so I'm going to put it in A tier. Alright, and then with these bottom ones, you think I'd just go through here, but I'm just going to kind of pick randomly. So the first one we have here that we'll do is the flint and steel. Now the flint and steel is, again, very similar to the lava bucket, in that you can use it fairly easily to deal a good amount of damage. However, I do find it is kind of harder to use as a weapon itself than a lava bucket, because a lava bucket you can place on any side of a block, whereas a flint and steel you have to place specifically on top of it, which can make it really annoying in combat situations, especially in PvP. And I don't really use this weapon almost at all in order to kill mobs. I mean, occasionally I have, but generally I don't do that. So I'm going to put it in C tier. And it doesn't really do quite as much damage as a good lava bucket. The next one we'll do is Splash Potion. So there's actually a good few different types of potion. Well, I should just say potion in general, but more specifically Splash Potions. I could have put Lingering Potions on here, but I'm just going to lump them to Splash and Lingering together, because they practically do the same thing. It's more so just a difference as to, if it's an instant effect or if it's placing on a cloud for a short period of time. But yes, essentially do the same thing. So there's 4 different types of negative potions in Minecraft. that you can use as weapons, that being the Potion of Harming, the Potion of Poison, the Potion of Weakness, and the Potion of Slowness. Now, weakness and slowness on themselves are not weapons per se. You use them alongside of other weapons, but they don't actually deal any damage in of themselves. They simply just make any opponents you're fighting just have a more annoying experience. So really, what you're looking at more so is potions of poison and harming. Now they deal a lot of damage, and especially if you combine with other weapons, then you can pretty effectively kill a lot of mobs and other players. But generally, like, I don't really carry around potions like to do that, and they're really more of like an assistive kind of thing, and they don't really they don't really deal. You really have to. I mean, throwing them at things, like, you don't have to have like a great aim. That's not the problem. But it's just like if you're relying solely on, or like using this as a main weapon, like, you're gonna need to carry around a lot of resources, which could be kind of expensive and costly, and you have to keep on making more potions. And also limited by the fact that they're one-time use, which is a significant downside. So I'm gonna put them in B tier. Next, we have the fishing rod. Now, the fishing rod is a cool weapon. It is used in both Bedrock Edition / Java 1.8 combat for stunning people, while it's also used in Java 1.9 or higher versions, sometimes in the offhand, sometimes not, mostly just in order to either annoy people by having the fishing rod in their face, but more importantly, to be able to pull any opponents up from a high place and then cause them to fall off and take a lot of damage. But it doesn't deal that much damage, if any, by itself. I think it does a little bit, maybe like, I think it's half a heart or a quarter of a heart or something like that. Generally not very much. But it can be very helpful. I don't really tend to use it myself, but it's not necessarily a bad choice, along some other things. I'm going to put it in B tier. These next two ones here I'm going to put together, snowballs and eggs, since they pretty much do the exact same thing, with eggs just being basically the worst version of snowballs, in that they're much more annoying to get a lot of, where snowballs you can simply just mine snow. There's a lot of places in the game you can do that, instead of having to wait 5 minutes for one singular chicken to drop one egg. And essentially these do is, they can be used to blow up ender crystals, which can be pretty helpful in speedruns or in some manhunts, but generally I don't really see people doing that too frequently. On top of that, they don't even actually deal any damage, and I don't even think that they do any knockback, so they're really not that good at all. In certain versions of the game, it might have been that they did deal knockback, and they would be helpful for that. But as the game stands so far, they don't deal knockback, and so I'm going to put these in just an F tier. Like, they don't deal any damage, and they're just really not that helpful. The next one here. TNT, a pretty solid weapon. It's not the cheapest, as it does require a few pieces of gunpowder, but if you're willing to kill a handful of creepers, or gas or something like that, then you can get yourself a good few pieces of of it. However, it's not quite as good as the bed in my opinion, simply just because, again, it's just more expensive, and the fact that you have to use some other external way to light it on fire instead of simply just using it by itself. But you can definitely kill lots of things. It's really good for traps. But just, yeah, by itself, if you're trying to kill people in Minecraft with it, you're gonna have to be really sneaky with it because they can probably just move out of the way unless you've managed to make some really good kind of trap system. So I'm gonna put it in B tier. Next, we're gonna do tridents. Tridents are a really interesting weapon because they can be used. They fall under 3 different categories: melee, and they deal a pretty good amount of damage. They deal 9 attack damage with a regular hit, and on top of that, they can also be used as a ranged weapon. I think dealing, what was it, 7 points of damage, 7 or 8, and then they can also be used as a assistive weapon, in that you can put Riptide on it and use it to propel yourself in water or in the rain to hit something through that way. In addition to, or in combination with, another weapon such as a sword or an axe, to deal a lot of damage in one hit. So it's a pretty cool weapon. However, it's not particularly practical, as again, getting them is annoying. While I am very glad that Mojang decided to let us be able to get tridents from trial chambers as loot, and I think that was a great decision. I think they're still, they're kind of a niche weapon in that there's only 2 different very specific ways of getting them, and most people probably aren't going to, so that does kind of lower their usage. In addition to that, they don't really deal, they're not really quite as good as an axe or a sword, or a bow or a crossbow, so they're kind of just like in the lower part of both melee and ranged, but they're not a bad weapon by any means. So I'm going to put tridents in B tier. Then we have crossbows. Crossbows are, admittedly, I know a lot of people really complain about them being quite slow, but they are definitely pretty good for a weapon. They have a solid amount of durability, and on top of that, they deal a pretty good amount of damage. Another thing that I really like about crossbows is that you're able to hold them. You're able to basically preserve attacks, as well as being able to use fire rockets in them, which, if you know how to make said kind of fire rockets, they can deal a massive amount of damage. And on top of that, again, like I said, you can store those shots. It's not like with a bow where you have to, you just want to shoot very quickly after you fire. With the crossbow, you can just load it up and then shoot at some different time, which is very, very helpful in a lot of scenarios, especially if your opponent is running away and they're at low health. Then I've often been able to finish them off with a good crossbow shot or fire, whether with an arrow or with the firework. In addition to that, they have some pretty good enchantments, such as quick charge, being allow them to fire much faster or load much faster. Apologies. Alongside of piercing or multi-shot, which allows you to deal damage to multiple entities or mobs or opponents at the same time. As well as, if you decide to do piercing, you can also go through enemy opponent shields, which is a massive advantage in a battle situation. So I'm going to put crossbows as S tier. Then we have ender crystals. Again, this is a staple of Crystal PvP. It's not a particularly hard weapon to use. In fact, you can simply just spam them down on a block. However, they are limited to being able to use on Obsidian or Bedrock. And again, you can't mine Bedrock in the game, so really only Obsidian is your only choice. And Obsidian is not the easiest block to get. You can definitely get lots of it if you have a lava farm or trade with a lot of piglins, or simply just mine a lot of blocks of it. Right, but generally, like, you're not going to be able to have the time in a speedrun or a manhunt or something like that to just mine out a bunch of obsidian in order to carry it. You might be able to take a few though. But on the flip side, it does a massive amount of damage, and you're often able to kill opponents even with really good armor. In addition to that, they have a very small cooldown. And so if you're able to place them right, you can basically essentially spam these and deal a massive amount of damage, able to kill opponents within just a matter of seconds. So again, very good, but I think really its biggest limitation is that you can only place it on Obsidian really, and that they're also really annoying to get a lot of. And then we have the bow. I think I'm just gonna go put this in S tier. It's a cheap weapon. It does a lot of damage. It's not too hard to use. It also has some really overpowered enchantments, such as power, being able to just increase the amount of damage you do with your bow. In addition to that, you can also put punch and flame, which basically allow you to knock opponents further back and deal fire damage to them on top of any power enchants you might have. And again, like I said, very cheap, very easy to use. A lot of the times, if you know how to have some decent aim, you can deal a lot of damage. And while I wouldn't recommend having only a bow as like your main, or having your bow as a main weapon, you could certainly do it. You could certainly rely on it. They have pretty good durability. Right, and arrows are not a particularly hard item to get. There's a lot of different ways to get them. So yeah, just overall pretty good weapon. Then last two, we have the sword and the axe. I'm just going to go ahead and put both of these in S tier. These are, I would say, arguably the best two weapons in the game, generally speaking, just because, well, they're craftable, they're not too necessarily hard to get or make. They have some really overpowered enchantments, and again, they also do other sort of things as well as fighting. So the sword, that's mostly being able to mine cobwebs. Again, not something that I really see people doing too frequently, but it is helpful to have. And then the axe, again, being able to be used as a weapon and to mine wood. So, very much practical there. And in addition to that, the axe can also disable opponent shields, which is a very valuable thing. So this is the ranking for all of the weapons together on the same page. So we'll go here If you're enjoying this and you want to see more content like this, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell. I'm trying to reach 50 subscribers before Valentine's Day, and we're at 43 right now. We're so close, and I just really want to be really great if we could reach that goal. Right, and just want to thank everyone who's helped contribute to that goal so far. It's really appreciated. So let's get back to the video. So this is a projectile / ranged weapon. So unfortunately, we're not re-ranking all of the weapons all together. So this will be really about how effective they are as a weapon, as well as, again, practical how much damage they do. I mean, although again, those are sort of, I guess, considerations for any of the weapons, I suppose. But so again, I'm just gonna, I think egg. That's just not a very good one. Same thing with snowball. And I think, right, we'll put. I'm gonna put wind charge here. I would feel like ranking it as a B tier, but then again, it's just very limited to where you can get it from, which I think makes it really suffer there. And I think probably put. I'm gonna put potion here in A tier. Because they can deal a lot of damage, in addition to that, you can also, when you're making them, you typically have a lot of them, and so you can deal a lot of damage really fast. Really only limitations, just being, like, again, they carry a lot of resources around to make them, and in addition to that, the fact that they don't stack. I know that tridents deal a lot of damage as a ranged weapon, but I'm putting them here in B tier because, well, a few things. So I mean, yes, they are perhaps arguably harder to get than wind charges, although it really depends on if you're playing Bedrock or Java Edition. This would probably differ between the two. And on top of that, it does deal a lot of damage. However, I don't really see people, or even myself, getting to try to take the time to acquire tridents, and typically be more willing to take some time to gather resources to make potions, which is a much easier sort of process. In addition to that, you really are just depending on what enchantments you put on your trident, and so in particular, if you don't have loyalty on your trident, then you're going to have to go and pick it back up every single time. On top of the fact that if it doesn't, if it doesn't have loyalty on it, then an enemy player could simply just pick it up and use it against you. And then again, I think we're going to put bow and crossbow here. So, this is our projectile / ranged category. Then we're going to do explosives. So this category and the next category might be kind of fast. And it's maybe the last one too. But, so I'm going to say, I think, personally, I think beds are probably, I would actually say that beds are S tier. Just because, like, they're very cheap. They're not too hard to use. And you can easily get a lot of them. The only really downside, again, just being that you really have to sort of block yourself off from being able to really take a lot of damage from them. And you also, you can really only use them in the nether or the end. But they work as a great trap, they're cheap, they're not that hard to use. So I think that they just make a good weapon, even if you can't use them in the other world. And I'm going to say next, probably TNT. Just because, again, I mean, it's not the cheapest weapon, but, you can stack it, you can make all sorts of really big traps with it. You can even do TNT cannons, and TNT launchers, which can be really helpful in a lot of scenarios. So I think they're a pretty good weapon. They're not quite as good as the bed, although I could see people making an argument for placing TNT as an S tier weapon. It's just my personal preference. Next, I'm kind of torn between these two, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to put these as I'm going to put both of these as B tier. And that's just because, like, okay, they are, like, they deal a lot of damage, okay? But you really have to know what you're doing with these, and they are kind of expensive, and they really require, like, a lot of resources in order to get them. Right, and I just don't really tend to use them myself. Like, but I definitely see, like, they're not very particularly practical in terms of usage. And you could make an argument for which one of these is the better weapon than the other one, right? And this, I mean, this one being easier, perhaps, since you can kind of spam these down, but then you're limited to what block you can place it on and how expensive they are. Whereas this one here, like, I mean, again, sort of expensive, but then like they're kind of harder to use. You can't really spam this down. So there's that. And then the last one here, crossbow with fire rockets. I think this can be pretty fun, but like again, like you're gonna probably need a lot of gunpowder in order to make this. And like I don't know. I think it's cool. Like it sounds really cool. But like, if you're going through all that, if you probably just have better luck with just making a bunch of crystals or maybe some respawn anchors. So I'm gonna put them in C tier. Like they're not bad. It's just they're not very particularly practical. In addition to that, if you're using a crossbow, I probably would just be using that for shooting arrows. So this is the explosives category here. Then we have assistives. So this is kind of like the stuff that you probably wouldn't use to like, by itself to kill any opponents. Although you could very well do that. But it's kind of like about either you dual wield these things. Like for example, you might have a sword in your main hand and a fishing rod in the other, or you might have an axe in one hand and the lava bucket in the other, right? Or anything like that. But really, these aren't really like the best weapons like by themselves, but rather with like what you're doing them with, or simply just to help you, damage opponents necessarily. Well, although you may not end up necessarily killing them, but they can be quite helpful. In addition to that, I think especially with the lava bucket and flint and steel here, again, you can also use them to burn any opponent's stuff, or any items that you want to get rid of, and they deal a pretty good amount of damage. So I'm thinking I'm gonna put lava bucket here in S tier. Again, it's very cheap. It's not too hard to use. You can place it any side of the block. It is dangerous, and you kind of have to be careful, but it is a pretty good weapon. And you can use it to burn, anyone's stuff, anyone who's trying to kill you. So, pretty good weapon overall. I'm gonna put flint and steel here in A tier. It basically does the same thing as the lava bucket, but it's like a slightly worse version of it. In addition to that, it also has a durability. The lava bucket does not. Obviously, you can use it infinite times as long as you pick the lava back up. Right, and it doesn't deal quite as much damage as the lava does, but it's not too bad. Next, I'm gonna put the fishing rod, and this is just because again you can use it to stun opponents or to bring them off of high heights. In addition to that, it's also not that expensive at all. You're only just requiring 2 pieces of string and 3 sticks, so not very hard to craft or to use. Then next, I'm going to say the trident, because you can use it. You can use it if it has Riptide. You can put it in your offhand, and you can do a lot of damage through it. It perhaps does the most amount of damage instantaneously as an assistive weapon when you put Riptide on it. If you manage to smack into something while you're using a Riptide trident. But again, it's just not particularly practical, and it's really more of a late game type of thing, which really makes it suffer. And then lastly, wind charges. I mean, I like wind charges, but I just think, like, generally overall, they're not a very good weapon. And like these are really only more useful for like parkour or escaping situations. And while they are, you know, very helpful, especially if, you know, if you have the mace, right? You know, it's not going to be very often that people are going to get a mace you know, in a world or in a challenge or something like that. And again, they just don't deal that much damage at all. Right. So this is the assistives category. Like it, you just have, you know, one for each. There we go. Right, and then we have the last category here. Right, and we have the sword, axe, trident, and mace. So right off the bat, I'm just going to go ahead and put trident in. I'm going to put trident in B tier, and I'm going to put the mace between A and B. That's just because I'm not too sure. It is a really good weapon, but again, it's just kind of hard to use, and it's not the easiest thing to get. But if you do have it, it's a massive game changer. So it's really kind of in between those. So now we have these last two. All right. Okay, and I don't know why actually I said originally that this is going to be controversial, because I was actually going to save this for another video here where I might try to argue why one of these two weapons is better than the other one. But I do think, right, as melee weapons, they both deserve to be in this S tier here, right? Because they deal a lot of damage, they're craftable, there's a lot of different types of them. You know, you can easily get more of them. In addition to that, they have some really overpowered enchantments, such as sharpness, that's shared by both of them. And then the sword also having things such as sweeping edge, knockback, and fire aspect, which can help with fighting a lot of mobs. So this is the melee Minecraft weapons tier here. So, and I do hope in another video I can perhaps argue why one of these two weapons, the sword or the axe, is better than the other one. Specifically dedicate for this. This is a very sort of controversial Minecraft PvP sort of topic here, but it'll be really fun to address that. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you disagree with any of these things here, or, you know, if you feel like the egg, it should be an S tier, or you know, or the potion should be in C tier here, or whatever, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.